The moment Delia told me she'd been offered a job in Seattle. We were sitting on the hood of her broken-down Civic in a 7-Eleven parking lot at 1:15 in the morning, and I had been about 12 seconds away from saying something I couldn't take back. I want to be clear about the 12 seconds, not because they matter in some grand cinematic sense, but because I had spent 3 months talking myself out of exactly this kind of moment, and the universe apparently found that funny. My name is Luke Harmon. I was 29, working as a sous chef at a small farm-to-table place in Nashville called Birch and Grain, renting a third-floor apartment I'd moved into after a relationship ended the way bad ones tend to, not with a fight, just a long, quiet fade, like a radio station you keep scanning past until one day you stop checking if it came back in range. My apartment had a good north-facing window, a second-hand couch, and nothing on the walls, which I told myself was minimalism, and which was mostly just not caring enough to make it a home. Delia moved into the apartment across the hall in February. I know it was February because I was carrying groceries when she first knocked on my door. She had a cat carrier in one hand and an expression that said she'd already tried 2 other neighbors, and neither of them had been useful. "Do you have a pair of pliers?" she said. "The latch on this carrier is stuck, and my cat is losing her entire mind in there." I set down the groceries. I handed her a pair of pliers. She crouched in the hallway and worked the latch open in about 45 seconds, while her cat, an enormous gray tabby she'd named Biscuit, watched through the mesh with the composure of an animal who had survived worse inconveniences and intended to survive this one too. "Thank you," she said, standing back up. "I'm Delia. I just moved in." "Luke, 3 years." "Good," she said. "Then you know where the ice machine is." I told her. She thanked me again and carried Biscuit through her door, and I stood in the hallway a beat longer than necessary before going back inside. That was how it started, which is to say, it didn't start. Not really. Not in any way I was willing to acknowledge. Delia was a veterinary technician at a clinic about 4 miles from our building. She worked odd hours, sometimes early mornings, sometimes late evenings, sometimes a full Saturday that sent her home at 9 with her scrubs still on and her hair in a bun that had structurally given up hours before. She smelled like antiseptic and, unexpectedly, lavender. I found out later she sprayed it on her scrubs because she'd read it calmed anxious animals and had decided it probably didn't hurt for anxious people either. For 3 months, we were hallway people. We nodded at the mailboxes. We waved across the parking lot. She knocked on my door in March to borrow an extension cord and returned it the next morning with a sticky note that said, "Cord is well adjusted now. Thank you for your service." In April, she slid a takeout menu under my door with a paper clip attaching a note. "In case you ever get tired of cooking for other people." The restaurant she'd chosen was a Vietnamese place 3 blocks away. I had been there twice already by myself and eaten too many spring rolls and felt fine about it. I liked her more than I admitted, even in the privacy of my own head. Not simply because she was easy to talk to. She was, but that wasn't the thing. The thing was that Delia didn't perform. She didn't curate her mood for the hallway. When she was tired, she looked tired. When something struck her as funny, she laughed before she could decide if it was appropriate. She had a way of listening that made you feel like what you were saying was actually landing somewhere real, not just bouncing off a polite surface. She always put her shoes outside her door at night. One worn pair of white sneakers, placed neatly to the left of the mat. I noticed this every time I came home. I don't know what it says about me that I noticed it. I noticed it anyway. I kept my distance on purpose. The year before Delia moved in, I'd been with someone who needed me the way a person needs a reliable car, useful, kept in good condition, not particularly thought about when everything was running fine. I don't blame her for it, entirely. I'd let it happen. I'd confused being needed with being wanted, and by the time I understood the difference, it had cost me more than I'd expected. So with Delia, I was deliberate. I helped when asked. I joked in the hallway. I kept the door between neighborly and something else shut, latched, firmly in place. Then, on a Friday night in late May, my shift ran long. We had a private event at Birch and Grain, 32 covers, 5 courses, a dessert component that required 3 separate attempts to plate correctly. By the time I got out, it was just before midnight. I had flour on my forearm, a low-grade headache from 4 hours of kitchen heat, and a real desire to get home without talking to anyone. I was 2 blocks from our building when I saw the hazard lights. A blue Civic pulled halfway onto the curb, 4 ways blinking slow and orange in the dark. I almost drove past. Then I recognized the registration sticker on the rear bumper, the county green circle, same as mine. And then I recognized the figure standing next to the car, phone pressed to her ear, studying the front of the engine, with the expression of someone who already knows they can't solve this alone. I pulled over. Delia looked up. Relief and mild embarrassment crossed her face in that order. "You really don't have to stop," she said. "What happened?" "It just died. I was 2 blocks from home and it died." She held up the phone. "I'm on hold with Triple, they said 90 minutes. I turned off my car. "I'll wait." "Luke." "I know," I said. "I've got nowhere to be." She looked at me for a second. Then she finished the call, and we pushed the Civic into the 7-Eleven lot ahead so it wasn't blocking the road. She didn't ask me to help push. She just started pushing, and I came around to the back. We ended up on the hood of her car. It was still warm, that specific late May warmth Nashville does before summer turns genuinely punishing, where the air feels like a favor the city is doing you before taking it back. The 7-Eleven hummed behind us. The parking lot sat mostly empty. Across the street, a bar was winding down, music reaching us in pieces when the wind shifted. The first half hour was easy. We talked about the car, about whether AAA membership was worth the annual fee, about the event at Birch and Grain, and why elaborate plated desserts were a form of professional self-harm that chefs kept inflicting on themselves. She told me about a cat she'd treated that afternoon who had somehow swallowed a hair tie and was doing completely fine, which was either a miracle or a strong argument for the durability of cheap accessories. Then the easy conversation ran its natural course, and what was left was the real kind. She'd grown up in Cincinnati, middle child of 3, had wanted to be a marine biologist until she was 14, and realized the nearest ocean was a 12-hour drive. She'd shifted to animals she could actually reach. She'd moved to Nashville 4 years ago for a relationship that ended 18 months later, stayed because leaving felt like admitting something she wasn't ready to admit. She liked Nashville, but wasn't sure she'd chosen it so much as landed in it. I told her I'd been cooking since 16, starting in a diner kitchen because I needed the money, and staying because it turned out I was better at it than at most other things. I told her the thing I'd never said particularly clearly to anyone, that what I liked about kitchen work was that what you made either worked or it didn't, and you knew within minutes, and there was something I found genuinely restful about that kind of immediate accountability. No ambiguity, no waiting to find out. Delia was quiet for a moment. That's a very specific thing to love about a job. "What do you love about yours?" She considered it carefully, the way she always seemed to with questions that deserved it. "The animals don't know what you're supposed to be," she said finally. "They just know if you're calm. I like that. It cuts out a lot of noise." I looked at her. She was watching the empty street. "You mentioned once that you hate cilantro," I said. It came out with no setup, no logical connection to what we'd been saying. Just a thing I'd been holding on to without meaning to. Delia turned her head. "When did I say that?" "March. You were coming back from the farmer's market. You said you'd almost grabbed the wrong bag of herbs, and you'd never forgive yourself." She stared at me. "What?" I said. "Nothing." She looked back at the street. A small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth and stayed there unexplained. The bar across the street went dark. The parking lot got quieter. Around 1 a.m., with the tow truck still 20 minutes out and the 7-Eleven's refrigerators the only real sound, Delia pulled her knees up and said, "I have to tell you something." I thought she was going to mention a building thing, a neighbor complaint, a mail mix-up, a second cat. "I got a job offer," she said, "in Seattle, at a veterinary research center, small animal clinical trials, real research, the kind that actually moves things forward." She said the description carefully, like she'd practiced the factual part but not what came after. "I applied in November, before I moved in." "What does the offer look like?" She said a number. It was a real step up. "They want an answer by Monday." Monday was 36 hours away. I sat with that. The bar across the street was fully dark now. A car turned onto the main road and swept its headlights across the lot and was gone. You haven't told anyone else yet, I said. She shook her head. You're the first person I've said it to out loud. Why me? She didn't answer immediately. She picked at a fraying edge on her sleeve, because I thought saying it to you would help me figure out what I actually wanted, not what I should want. And did it? She looked over, still collecting data. I understood then something I'd been almost understanding for 3 months. The way she'd returned the extension cord with a note. The way she'd slid a takeout menu under my door, no explanation. The way she'd said nothing after I mentioned the cilantro and smiled like I'd answered a question she hadn't asked yet. What do you want? I said. Not what makes sense, not what's the right move. What do you want? That's the problem. She exhaled slowly. 3 months ago, I would have said Seattle immediately. Now I keep finding reasons to think about Nashville. 12 seconds, approximately, I've estimated them since. 3 months of a firmly latched door. 3 months of being deliberate and careful and right about why I was keeping my distance. The arguments were sound. They were also, it turned out, not the point. I've been avoiding you, I said. Delia blinked. What? Not rudely, or not intending to be. I looked at the asphalt because looking at her directly felt like too much information at once. Since February, I've been noticing things. The shoes you leave outside your door, the way you hum in the elevator before you realize you're doing it. The extension cord note, the takeout menu. I stopped. I decided the sensible thing was to keep all of that at the hallway level, and I think I was probably wrong to do that, and I wanted to say so. Delia didn't say anything. I looked at her. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Not surprised, but careful. Like someone who'd been waiting to see if something was real before deciding how to react to it. I'm not asking you to turn down Seattle, I said. I'm not saying this to make your decision harder. I stopped. Tried again, slower. I wanted you to know what was true. That's all. The silence went long enough that I began composing a graceful way to take back none of it, but to make it easier to live across the hall from each other. You noticed the shoes, she said. Every night. I thought maybe I was just leaving them there out of habit. You always put them to the left of the mat. Exactly. Something shifted in her face. Not surprise, something closer to relief. Luke. Yeah. I applied to Seattle because I thought I needed to want something like that, she said. A clear next step. Something that proved I was moving forward. She looked down at her hands. I didn't want to be someone who stayed in a city by default, because she didn't know what she was staying for. And now? She looked at me with the direct, full attention look I had been on the receiving end of exactly 4 times since February, and each time it had quietly rearranged something in me. Now I'm in a parking lot at 1 a.m., she said, telling you the plan might be wrong, and I'm not as upset about that as I expected to be. The tow truck pulled in a few minutes later, a tired man named Gil, who had seen enough parking lot breakdowns to be wholly unbothered by ours. He hooked up the Civic efficiently, had Delia sign a form, and pulled away. We stood in the empty space where her car had been. I'll drive you home, I said. Okay. In the car, she turned the radio down without asking. Not off. Just low enough that the silence had room. I wasn't going to tell you about Seattle, she said. Why not? Because I knew it would change things, and I wasn't sure I wanted them changed. She watched the streetlights pass. I liked knowing you were across the hall, even if it was just the hallway. I'm still going to be across the hall. Luke. I know. I kept my eyes on the road. I just mean, whatever you decide, I'm not factoring myself into it as a reason. That's not fair to you. She was quiet for a block. Then, what if I want you to be a reason? I parked. Neither of us moved for a moment. Then I want that too, I said. I've wanted that since February, and I've been very principled about it. She laughed, one real quiet laugh, and the knot the night had tied in my chest loosened slightly. Very principled, she said. Thank you for noticing. We walked up together. 3rd floor, hallway light steady, Her shoes were already outside her door from the previous day, left side of the mat, exact as always. She turned at her door, didn't open it right away. "For what it's worth," she said, "I noticed you too, since February." She looked at the shoes, then back up. "I just didn't know what to do with it yet." "Same," I said. She gave me a look, tired and warm, and something else I didn't want to name too quickly, and went inside. I stood in the hallway for a moment before going back to my apartment, the good kind of moment. The kind that means something instead of just being empty. Monday afternoon, I was on a 15-minute break in the alley behind Birch and Grain when my phone buzzed. "Delia, I have something to tell you. Call me when you're done." I called her from the alley, leaning against the brick. "I turned it down," she said. I closed my eyes for a second. "Yeah?" I made a list, an actual paper list, which is embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. One side was all the reasons Seattle made sense, she said. Career trajectory, salary, the research itself. The other side was everything else. She paused. The Seattle side was longer, objectively. But when I looked at the other side, it felt more like my life. The clinic. Nashville in October when it finally cools down. Biscuit's vet who knows her by name. A small pause. "You're on that side." In case that wasn't obvious. "It was a little obvious," I said. I appreciated it. She got quieter the way she did when something was serious. "I didn't turn it down for you. I want to say that clearly." "I know." I turned it down because I realized I applied to escape something I was afraid to name, not because I actually wanted to go to Seattle. "That's a bad reason to move across the country," she exhaled. "But you're a specific detail in the staying side of things. So there's that." I was grinning in a restaurant alley with dish noise coming through the kitchen door, and I didn't try to stop it because there was no one there to see. That was the real beginning. Not the parking lot, not the hallway conversation, not the moment the tow truck interrupted something that hadn't finished happening yet. The beginning was a Monday afternoon in May, Delia on her lunch break, me in an alley, both of us saying true things to each other without rehearsing them first. After that, we stopped being hallway people. We had dinner together twice that first week. We walked the neighborhood Saturday mornings before the heat set in. We had an argument in July, a real one, quiet and uncomfortable, about the way I went silent when I was overwhelmed, and how to her, silence without warning, read as something being wrong. I had to learn again, and not for the first time, that going still to sort your thoughts only works if the person with you knows that's what's happening. Delia was with me learning it. I tried to be patient with her habit of assuming the worst-case version of ambiguous situations before working her way back. By August, she had a key to my apartment for when her window AC unit cut out, which happened often. By September, the key had stopped being specifically about the AC. She kept her shoes outside her door. I kept noticing them. Some things you don't want to change. In October, I was nearly home from a closing shift when my phone lit up. Getting gas at the 7-Eleven on Fern if you're close. The same one, same lot. I pulled in. She was under the awning with 2 drinks in her hands, having grabbed one for me before I arrived. Sweet tea, clear cup, no sweetener packet wrapper on the lid. "Peach," she said, handing it over. "No extra sweet. You said once the overly sweet kind feels fake." I took it, looked at her. When did I say that? March. She tilted her head the way she did when she was enjoying something. "You were coming back from the grocery store. I asked what was in the bag, and you said sweet tea, and then specified the regular kind, not the kind that tastes like a sugar emergency." I stood in that parking lot under the awning with the October air finally doing what October was supposed to do, and I thought about February. The pliers, the extension cord note, a 1 a.m. parking lot in May, a phone call from a restaurant alley, the shoes always to the left of the mat. "You remembered that," I said. She handed me the tea. "I pay attention," she said, like it was the simplest thing, like it had always been simple between us, and we'd just needed a broken-down Civic and a 90-minute wait to stop pretending otherwise. And the thing about Delia was, she was right. It had always been simple. She'd just been paying attention from the start, since a February hallway and a pair of pliers, and all I'd had to do was eventually stop locking the door. Have you ever kept something true to yourself for months, because saying it out loud felt riskier than silence. And did it change anything when you finally said it, or just the one thing it needed to change? Tell me in the comments. And if you want shorter stories, no ads, every week, the membership link is below. Either way, I'll see you in the next one.